Dan Bidondi, TruthRadioShow.com. I'm in Woonsocket, Rhode Island, and I decided to have a meet and greet with the political candidates of Rhode Island. So we got about a dozen candidates here we're going to talk to tonight and ask them what their platform, what their vision is for Rhode Island, and why the mainstream media is not covering the important issues and the topics. And we're going to ask the tough questions today. Okay, I'm here with Stacey Capizzano. She's running for House as a state representative, District 5 in Providence. So how you doing, Stacey?
Good. How are you?
Oh, great. So you running as an independent?
I am.
Awesome. So now the problems in Providence, you get the violence, high cost to live in, and all that. So what are your plans if you become a state representative? I know one of many that can make a voice here in Rhode Island. So what are your plans to do to when you win? Hopefully you win state representative to change Providence.
I am going to talk to the people and ask them their ideas, see what I could bring to a state level. And I want to support the average person because I am an average person. I'm a working registered nurse. I don't have these lofty ideals to bring people down. That seems like, what is the Agenda 2030? It seems like they're going right along with, you will own nothing and you will love it. Like they're just pricing us out of everything. I completely disagree with that. Like, we should be able to be empowered and have our individual liberties to raise our families the way we see fit. I want to bring back morality to the State House. There's a lot of nonsense going on down there. I was at the State House a lot this spring, and I realized I want to and I can vote from the inside and work together with people. So that's part of my vision.
Absolutely. Speaking of morality in the state, I mean, you got these bills by certain individuals trying to push bills to teach children how to sexually pleasure themselves. What are your thoughts on that?
I think we need to vote those people out. And that's part of why I want to be in the State House, because I would say absolutely not to stuff like that. I'm representing the average person, again, because I am one, and I don't think the average person would agree with that bill going through. I'm glad it got shot down. There were other things that almost passed that shouldn't have gotten that close. So I just want to be one of those things, again, speaking for the average person in my community.
Absolutely, and you mentioned the Great Reset, basically the World Economic Forum's agenda, and the United Nations Agenda 2030, which is, yes, they don't want you to own nothing. And people look at you with three eyes, but they don't understand this hits home, this hits at the local level. So as a state representative, what would you do to protect our Constitution from this globalist agenda?
Well, I do think the founding fathers of the Constitution were ahead of their day, and they were led by God himself to be able to come up with this, because no other government in the world has done this, where it's empowered its people to be able to have the freedoms that we have for so long. Every other government in the world has been a lot more tyrannical, a lot more bossy, telling people what to do. For instance, the electrical price increase. So a bunch of us went to the Public Utilities Commission recently to speak to them, but that's a decision that was already moving forward because the policies that had been implemented, again, the Agenda 2030, you will own nothing and you will love it. Extra creepy, right? And that's part of how it happens. We get priced out of everything. The price of gas and home heating oil, it's October, it's getting colder. I haven't turned the heat on yet, but it's coming soon. The food is outrageous, like minimum wage, that's always up for discussion. Like medical care is extremely expensive. It just seems like they want to break the system and rush in as the knight in shining armor so that we're completely dependent on the government, and they hold all the strings to dictate what we do. So I am pro-constitutional, pro-personal liberty, pro-personal responsibility, pro-family, pro-parent, and does that answer your question? Yes,
it does, and of course, a big issue too with the way they push these gun control bills through. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So what would you do? I mean, like, obviously, would you support the Second Amendment and God-given rights?
Yes, because come and take it. Seriously. Like, again, the founding fathers had the foresight and they were enlightened to know enough that, yes, you need to allow your people to arm themselves as they see fit. And they even wrote the line, "It shall not be infringed," because this happens in governments throughout the course of time. It's going to be interesting to see what happens in America, because we're very perilously close to that tipping point. But Americans have more guns than anywhere else in the world. It's going to be interesting seeing how this plays out.
Absolutely. And last question here. So this is a big issue that I probably didn't, out of all the politicians I've interviewed, probably like maybe 5% actually answered this question. So a big question here. We have a huge problem, like people being homeless, out of work, hungry, sleeping in cars, sleeping on park benches. And I know, again, the state level, as a state representative, you can only do so much. But what would you do, and to the best of your power, to try to help these homeless people?
Well, there's an old saying, I can hear different politicians saying, give them a hand up and not a handout. There's got to be some job that they can have. Everybody's good at something, okay? And that kind of gives people some sense of purpose and starts to build their sense of responsibility and ability to accomplish things and feeling like they're a valuable part of society. Those are just some of my beginning thoughts. That's a tough issue. It's very multifactorial. There's no usually one simple reason why people got there. A lot of them have trouble with mental illness, and a lot of them also have addiction problems. Some of them have addiction problems because of the mental illness, or vice versa. Who knows? Some people are down on their luck. There's no easy answers there, but I think everybody should have some job to be able to start empowering them.
Yeah, no, basically what I was trying to ask too is, like, if the state could send money over to Ukraine, send money over to all these other countries, provide housing for illegals, but yet they don't do nothing but for the homeless. So how would you redirect those funds to go into Rhode Island people first?
It should stay in Rhode Island first, and it should stay in America first. I'm not sure why we're sending so much money to Ukraine if it wasn't just a giant money laundering thing, honestly. Yes, we should be helping our own people before it gets sent overseas to God knows what it's doing over there.
And in closing, the average public out there, the voters in your district, what would you tell them right now to convince them to vote for you?
Well, I'm a registered nurse and an average person, first-time politician. I'm not coming into it because I love politics. Who loves politics? Come on. But I'm sick of seeing all the tyranny and the ridiculous stuff going on at the State House. I'm an average person, and I believe in the intellect and the ability of my neighbors to be able to care for themselves if we just allow them to be able to do the right thing for themselves.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Stacey Capizzano, and good luck.
Thank you.
Hi, we're here with Ivan Montanez, District 13 for State Representative Independent. How you doing, bro?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Awesome, man. So, general questions, hard-hitting questions like we always like to do. Number one, okay, we're going to talk about the economy here in Rhode Island. As a state representative, what would you do to help increase the economy, and more in the level, because we know the jobs are up right now, but more in the level to help these businesses, like give tax relief to the small businesses, stuff like that, to help them prosper so they can hire more people and give more pay raise?
Well, definitely. I mean, small businesses is what gets the economy running, especially in our state. We need to incentivize these people to want to start a business here in Rhode Island or start a new business. Cutting regulations, we need to think about the workers. Right now, we're not thinking about the workers when we think about wage increase. When you talk about wage increase, the ones that hurt is actually the small businesses, because they can't keep up with the wage, and obviously it cuts into their pockets, and then they have to make a decision whether do we close or do we just weigh this out. So definitely we got to focus on our small businesses, incentivize them, cut regulations, and help them prosper.
Absolutely, which leads into the economy with we have a big issue with a lot of people homeless. Unfortunately, we have a lot of homeless people in Rhode Island. Instead, the state decides we're going to help people from Ukraine, help people from other countries, Afghanistan, and all that. What about Rhode Island? So, do you believe that the state should put the Rhode Island citizens first?
Oh, of course, definitely. If we can't take care of ourselves, how are we going to help somebody else? You know, it's just like and anything in life. Yeah. You know, you can't help somebody if you can't help yourself first. We need to make sure that our people are taken care of first before we have extra money to allocate for anybody else, especially let alone somebody in a different country. Yeah. You know, like take care of our homeless people here in Rhode Island, start here, across the United States. Once we have the homelessness issue under control, then we can start investing into other communities and other countries that are also struggling with homelessness. You know, but my big thing is we got to take care of our own people first.
Absolutely. Now we'll move on to the gun issues here. So the state of Rhode Island decides, even though it got voted down in the Senate, the Judiciary Committee, I believe it was, but it got voted down the gun bills, but they still pushed it through anyway, and, you know, cancel out the voices, the thousands of people come out to testify for these bills. Their voices don't count, so now they illegally and unconstitutionally push these gun bills through. As a state representative, what would you do to help protect the Second Amendment, to right to defend ourselves?
Yeah, so I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment. I feel like everybody should be able to protect themselves, especially protecting what's yours, protecting your home, protecting your family. I'm a big supporter of that. Those politicians that ignored the thousands and thousands of voices of everybody, that just shows that they're actually not there for their constituents. They're actually there for their own ideology and what they feel. As a representative, I'm not there to represent my views and my points. I'm there to represent my constituents. So if my constituents want the Second Amendment protected, that's the same values that I have. I will fight tooth and nail to make sure that everybody is able to protect themselves when needed.
Absolutely. Now, like we got our rights being attacked. Now our children are being attacked. As you all know, it's State Senator Samuel Bell trying to push a bill through to literally teach young little toddlers in school how to sexually pleasure themselves. In other words, grooming our children. As a state representative, what would you do to help protect the children and give parents their choice, their right to choose what their kids don't learn and do learn?
So that also falls onto parental rights. Parents should know exactly what their children are learning in school. We do have to remember that these kids, even though they are our community kids, at the end of the day, those are not our kids. Parents should have make the decisions what their child can and cannot learn. When it comes to sexual pleasure and the bill that Senator Tiara Mack and everybody else is trying to pass, that's not our place to teach these young kids as young as 6th grade anything about sexual pleasure. We don't all mature the same way. Yeah. So imagine teaching self-pleasure to a child that hasn't even matured yet. That's not even in his thought process. Yeah. Some kids are not now. I work in the school department. Some kids now, especially that age, 6th grade, when you tell them, "Oh, that's your girlfriend," what do they say? "Oh, no, that's not my girlfriend." You know, they're not thinking of anything like that. So why should we pervert their minds by forcing them to learn on something that they're not even ready to learn? I feel like stuff like that should be left to the parents. Education is co-parenting. Let the parents teach them about sexual pleasure. Let the parents teach them about anything that has to do with the self-pleasure or anything like that. If they have any questions, they can ask their parents. Now, when you come to high school, I do believe it being age-appropriate, how some people like to use, like comprehensive common sense, age-appropriate. Yeah, age-appropriate when they get to high school, when we know that they're at that level where they're experimenting or they're, going through puberty, when they have questions. We should have programs in school for those type of things, like health class or even like LGBTQ like groups or something to be available for every type of questions that a teenager might have, that we all go through. But to do it at a middle school level, that's when you're crossing the line. That should be left to the parents.
Absolutely. And also, we got a lot of issues in Rhode Island, such as the tolls nobody voted for. They pushed them through anyway, but the court stopped them. Things like that. Also the state mandate that if you don't have health care, guess what? We're going to extort you for taxes. What's your thought on that? Like, basically, should the state penalize people if they can't afford health care?
No. Like I said, that's government overreach. You're trying to force somebody to do something that they don't want to do. If they don't want to do it, they have the freedom to. That's why we all love the United States. The fact that you have the freedom to choose how you want to live your life, to say what you want to say. Forcing somebody, the government trying to force somebody to get a vaccine, force somebody to, whatever it is. Government shouldn't be forcing anybody to do anything. You know, as long as you're a law-abiding citizen, you pay your taxes, and you're not causing any harm to anybody else, the government should stay out of it.
Absolutely, and you know, like recreation Rhode Island, like Chris Ireland mentioned that we do have tons of restaurants. We got the best food in the world right in the state of Rhode Island. But as far as recreation for children, like amusement parks, water parks, things like that, we have nothing. So what would you do as a state representative to help say, all right, propose ideas how we could bring these kind of things back to Rhode Island?
That's something that obviously, depending on the voters' ages that are watching this, but Rocky Point, we had Rocky Point. Yeah. Rocky Point was a good time. I remember going there when I was little, very, very, very young, so I have vague memories of it. But that was a good part. We don't have to drive 2 hours to go to Six Flags or to Water Country. We have something in our own state where people that might not have the funds to afford gasoline, especially at high cost of gasoline now, you know, people that don't have the gas to drive 2 hours to go to Six Flags. You know, like, there's kids that want to experience that. They see it on TV, they're like, how does that make them feel? Be like, well, I want to go here, but my family can't afford it, you know? But if we have something in Rhode Island for these kids to do, you know, like Rocky Point, it doesn't necessarily have to be like Rocky Point, but an amusement park where the kids can go there, they can even take the Rip the Bus, where you can give your child a couple bucks, be like, hey, take the Rip the Bus, go to Rocky Point. I was just going to say Rocky Point because that's what we all know, you know?
Increases revenue.
It increases revenue. It brings businesses, people from other states. So instead of us going to Massachusetts to go to Six Flags or Water Country, people can come to our state and spend money in our state. And then that way we can use those funds, or at least some of it, to attack homelessness, you know, to bring down the cost of living for everybody when it comes to rent and everything else. So I say, like, it's a win-win situation. We have to invest into Rhode Island if we want to grow as a community, if we want to grow as a state. We have to invest in our own people, like I was saying before, instead of investing on other people in other countries. I mean, I understand we want to help everybody because, you know, that's in our nature to help everybody, but we have to help our state first.
Absolutely. So, as a state representative, do you have any platforms that you decide? It's like, all right, if I'm a state representative, I want to push certain things. Do you have any personal platforms that you want to do to help our community?
Yeah, definitely. So some of the stuff that I definitely want to attack is, I definitely want to go for is parental rights. We definitely need to get these parents more involved. Definitely attacking the high cost of living when it comes to housing, rent, and energy. Also, community and public safety. Like I said, I work in the school department, and if we have a system right now where we are, in order to go see a representative in the State House, you have to go through check-in through a state police officer. So we have funds to protect adults, but we don't want to protect our kids, the future leaders, the potential future leaders, the person who could probably be the next doctor, the next mayor, the next senator. We leave them vulnerable. I'm pretty sure in a building full of adults, we can defend ourselves. I'm not saying we're all going to be like superheroes and we're going to throw on a cape and start fighting bad guys, but we have a better chance of protecting ourselves rather than our kids. So how is it that we protect our state representatives and everything, but we leave our kids vulnerable?
Yeah, they protect banks, federal buildings, everything else. All with guns, State House, they have armed guards there, the police, Capitol Police and all that. So, and Providence Police and State Police, you know what I mean? And the Sheriff's Department, all there to protect you guys. But however, the schools, most of these schools are vulnerable. No protection at all.
Yeah. Our future leaders, everything is vulnerable. And then, unfortunately, I hope it does not happen that we wait till something bad happens to be like, wow, we should have done something, or let's do something now. No, let's be proactive. Let's not be reactive. Let's be proactive. Let's nip it before it happens, before it becomes an issue.
Absolutely. So, and the people in your district, what would you tell them? Give them a good reason to vote for you.
So, I'm not a normal politician. I haven't been in this for a while. I'm just a normal community member. I grew up in my community. I grew up in the projects with a single mom and 2 siblings. I went to elementary school, middle school in my district. I went to high school, and I'm currently working in the school department where I graduated high school for.
So you're a staple of the community. So
I'm from the community. It's my only home, and that's the reason why I'm running, because it's my home. It's the only home that I know, and it's the only home that I'm fighting for right now. The reason why I believe everybody should vote for me is because, unlike my opponent, I won't be a part-time representative. I'll be a full-time state representative. I'm pretty sure not a lot of people know, but out of the 56 days, legislative days that they have, my opponent missed 25 days. So pretty much half of the days of legislative work that he missed. Not only that, but when you break it down to votes, he actually missed 222 legislative bills that he did not vote on. That's not giving our community a voice. That's letting another representative make that decision for our community.
In the meantime, he got paid the money from the taxpayers.
Yeah. So in the meantime, he's still getting paid taxpayer dollars. He's still getting paid money. Now think about you. If you don't go to work, if you don't go to Best Buy, if you don't go to Home Depot, and you don't show up, you don't get paid for that day. So the fact is that he's collecting money, taxpayer dollar, our money, and he's only showing up half of the time. So he's a part-time candidate. I'll be the full-time candidate. Not only that, he doesn't really have a good record. I have a couple things here. Obviously, from August 3rd, he was also fined $6,000 for misuse of campaign finance funds. Those are actually dollars that us that we're actually struggling with. We're all struggling. So the fact that somebody gave him his last $20 or their last $10, and he decides that he's going to use it on his own personal use, that's a slap in the face to everybody, and everybody should know that. Not only that, but in 2016, he was also there was also article of him on the news, because when he tried to put a legislation forward, I guess it was screenshots of like pornographic like tabs on there with like, it's all right here. I don't speak out of my behind. I don't speak out of my behind. So
Government computers right there, right?
yeah, so pretty much he brought an article when he was trying to put forward, and on the top right here it says all the different tabs like teen, it says young, it says MILF. So he tried to use the excuse that it was one of his friends that gave him that. But if you're gonna pass on information that somebody gives to you, as a representative, don't you want to review the information or the facts that somebody gave you before you pass it on to somebody else? So that's one. If it's true that somebody gave it to him, he's irresponsible for passing on information that he didn't verify himself or at least check that it was accurate. Or two, he's lying and it was actually him that was actually doing it. So one of the two is right, or they can both be right. So
Absolutely. Well, thank you for your time, and good luck.
thank you.
Hi, this is Seangsouk Eve Garbantan, running for City Council Ward 12 in Providence, Rhode Island.
You're running as independent?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so Providence, I mean, like, it's been in the media, a lot of crime, high rates of living, places going crazy. So, as you know what's going on in the city council, as a city council member, what would you do to, first of all, tackle the high cost of living?
That's a really big issue that's come across all of Rhode Island, especially in Providence, where a lot of people are lower income, and it's myself included. I'm pretty much middle income, I'll say that, but it's still a struggle. So I can imagine how the lower income families are handling the inflated costs of goods at our local grocery store in Smith Hill called Aldi's. As a lot of people love Aldi's, and Aldi's has become very expensive. I go in there with $50 and I go out with basically $20 worth of goods that, 2 years ago I would leave $50 and I would have a whole week's of goods. It's costly. It's become very costly, and with the electrical bills going up and our gas bills going up this winter season, it's going to be tough for all income levels. So it's not just a low income, middle income thing. It's an all income level problem that we are dealing with. So it's just a matter of my friend told me we got to insulate our homes. So we have to engage with the neighborhoods to tell them, insulate your windows, get the draft blockers, and get help if you need it. So don't go behind your bills where you may have a shut off. There's help out there in Rhode Island. There's help out there in Providence with all the community agencies and organizations that can assist you with applying for LIHEAP, and if the food bills are too high, SNAP. So there are ways to counteract inflation, but we also have to be mindful of not exhausting the resources for the people that do need it the most.
And also, speaking of Providence and the crime and all that, so now again we got high value, rate of crime in Providence, Rhode Island. So, and you got city council members talking about defunding the police department when now more than ever we need them most. So, what would your plan to be to counter that and actually support the police chief there, and also support the Providence Police to actually provide funding to put more police in the community?
Well, I'm not for anything with defunding any police department in any state or across the nation. For myself, I raise kids. I raise my kids in a neighborhood that doesn't have much safety and security at the moment, and it's never had. It was different when I was a single person living with my then boyfriend, fiance, husband. Now I'm raising two little ones, and that's the utmost importance of me, is keeping my neighborhood safe. And so it is of value to continue to fund our police departments, to give them the right resources, to enable them to have the proper trainings to handle crises that they're not able to handle, and they shouldn't handle. They shouldn't handle a lot of the calls they get, but they do handle those calls. And unfortunately, they get scrutinized for mishandling them badly, and that's not their fault because they weren't trained properly. So I think we need to get more funding for the police departments to be able to fund other social service programs that they can work with. They work with the Family Service RI, the Providence Center. It goes on and on and on. And these people are getting paid, but it's not enough people getting paid. We need more of these employees from these NGOs and nonprofits in Providence to work hand in hand with our police officers. And so it is not a movement that I'm for. It is a movement that has caused a lot of ripple effects in our communities. The people that are suffering are these inner city urban neighborhoods because of the gun violence, because of physical, mental, emotional abuse between elderly to children. It is something that can be resolved, and it's not going to be resolved by stripping police officers, police departments of the jobs that they are so needed for.
And speaking of the police and everything else, the big issue with the ATVs, people riding the ATVs through the streets because they're protesting, we have nowhere to ride these things. We could go to the stores, we could buy these things from dealerships, but we have nowhere to ride, and the police confiscate them and everything else. So basically the voice of the people, they're demanding that the city provide a safe place for them to ride without them getting their butts busted. So, again, the city council, you could probably do too much, but what would you do to help support them to get them a safe place to ride, and also take people, because a lot of problems resolves as people in the community, just nowhere to go, nothing to do. What would you do to help, number one, to help provide a safe place where they could ride, maybe bring some revenue to the city, come pay $5, you could ride all day, sign a waiver and all that, and also help provide for more community centers for the youth?
I'm not against the ATVs and what that may be. You actually use them all the time in the woods. And so the issue was having them used on city streets, and the people that were using them were abusing them. It's one thing if you're riding on the street and you weren't causing a ruckus, you weren't surrounding people, you weren't honking people, you weren't putting fear in people to drive next to you, to drive near you, and you weren't going out and hurting others, actual physical hurt. And that even happened with the jump bikes. It became like herds of jump bikes riders abusing what the point of a jump bike is. So there needs to be an ability to utilize the ATV in an appropriate way, yes. And so could there be funding for it? Why not? They just endowed from the American Rescue Plan funds, ARPA, to do some arts for $5 million. So why not have some funding go towards these extracurricular activities that could be utilized, maybe not in particular in Providence because there might not be enough space, but if there were space, great. There could be a set fee and people could get the encouragement to ride it in a legal way, in a safer way, in a modified real way where they can actually ride and not be out in public and get hurt themselves. So ATVs on public streets, no. On highways, no. But in a legal manner, on actual provided spaces where there are actual places to do tricks, why not? Cool, that would be great for them.
And the community centers for the youth are obviously more funding for them?
Community centers can only do so much. It has to be the youth coming to use the community center. So if the community center is not getting funded and people are using them, that's unfortunate. But the youth need to come use the community centers so they can get better funded, because then there are write-ups of grants and how much great, beautiful work that youth center, that community center is doing for our young people.
Last question here, obviously, is a big problem. People unfortunately being homeless in the city of Providence and being kicked off of park benches, nowhere to go. So, as a city council member, what would you do to help advocate to help these people and put them into homes, and just do something to help them, especially with the winter coming?
The affordable housing being affordable, homes in general being available for people that don't have the means to pay for rent. It's a very unfortunate situation, and one of my counterparts that inspired me to run for city councilor writes the paper for our city. So she has allowed me to learn from her and understand what their needs are. And it's important to help the people that want to get help. And that's unfortunate because there are people that don't want help. And that kind of, it's like that soiled fruit. So we don't want to look at that soiled fruit not wanting to accept help, not wanting to get help. We want to look at them all and go, okay, what are the appropriate resources and tools and programs for each person in that bag of fruit? And it's important that, no one goes cold this winter. No one goes cold now because it's already getting very cold in October, which is kind of crazy because it was super hot a month ago. So every person needs a home. Every person needs a place in the shelter. And if that means the city funding up more resources such as building in these dilapidated vacant buildings and apartments and churches even, providing just a little small space for these people to get out of the cold. That's very important, and there are funds for it, and the city needs to do better with allocating the right funds for the right programs that our people in Providence need.
And thank you. So what would you tell people in Ward 12, your neighbors? What would you tell them to convince them, hey, give me a chance to vote for me?
I'm just a mom. I love my kids, and honestly, I'm doing this for my kids. And if you have kids and you understand why I'm doing it, I want to live in my home in Smith Hill in Providence. I am in love with this neighborhood. At the same time, it's not safe for them. So I'm stepping up to have a better, safe, healthy environment for my two little ones.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm here with Niyoka Powell. She's running for state senator, District 1, that's the Providence area, as independent. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So, we got a lot of state issues going on here in the state of Rhode Island. Number one right now is big issues such as the gun control bills. I mean, gun, safety and everything else. They try to take your safety away. Use safety to take your constitutional rights away. So, as a senator, what would you do to protect the Second Amendment and our rights?
I think that it was written for a reason, that we have a right to protect our family, we have a right to bear arms, we have a right to have that possession of a weapon in the event the government becomes tyrannical. I would protect everyone's right to utilize a firearm, especially those who have a firearm. They know the rules and regulations that go along with ownership. I think that the problem we're having is the amount of firearms that are in the market currently or in the public currently that are not registered firearms, not being utilized by people who appropriately have the training to utilize those firearms. So penalizing people who are constitutionally responsible is not the way to go about that.
Absolutely, and it's a great answer, too. So, also, speaking of constitutional rights and all that, what do you think about the state just over, and there's your beautiful daughter right there. Hi, what's your name?
Naomi.
Naomi. So you got to vote for your mommy? So, the state attacking people's rights left and right. I mean, that could be from anything from Second Amendment and so on. But, I mean, the state has become overruling. As you can see, we all been to all the rallies and everything else. So, just to protect everybody's general rights, I mean, and, free speech and everything else, and everything's being eroded from the government down to the local level. So, as a state senator, what would you do to advocate and also put liberty into the hearts of the Rhode Island voters?
I think that that's something that is missing from the home. The fact that the United States was built and the state of Rhode Island was built on these fundamental rights of protecting your home, protecting your family, and having a good moral standing. Without liberty, you have a fascist state. You have socialism. You have everything that America was getting away from, why the Pilgrims came here to begin with. They wanted religious freedom. And so those liberties are something that is innately built within the Constitution itself. And to disrupt that liberty from any person, whether you came here as an immigrant or as, American born, it's 100% against the Constitution and what this country was founded on. So as a senator, I would vote for anything that provides a basis of sustaining liberty for the people, not for myself, for the people.
Absolutely. Now the big problem in Rhode Island, we got a lot of unfortunate people that are homeless, living in cars, sleeping on benches and everything else. What would you do to say, tell the state of Rhode Island, let's stop giving money to foreign countries and all that. Let's help Rhode Islanders first. Would you have a plan to come up with some kind of a bill to help the people in Rhode Island who are homeless?
Well, we currently are extended into the state of emergency. So with that, the state of Rhode Island does get federal funding from the U.S. government. That is something that could be utilized to help with either rebuilding currently dilapidated buildings. The Superman building could be turned into a sanctuary for these people. You could turn it into a program downtown. I mean, it's right there next to all the municipalities and the important buildings, the courthouses, where you could turn that into a functional living space for the homeless that would incorporate mental health. Butler Hospital is right there. Alpert School of Medicine is right there. They could do their internships within that program. We can have Rhode Island Department of Labor and Training partake in that too. So when they are ready and emotionally ready to get into work, we can train them and get them into programs that will help them become what they were before. I mean, these people had lives before they were homeless. And unfortunately, the way the state is being run right now, it's putting more and more families, even middle-class families, into homelessness, and it's not fair.
Absolutely. Now, recreation, we used to have Rocky Point, big attractions that bring people in the state of Rhode Island. We don't have nothing no more. So, as a state senator, what would you do to help bring attractions to here, Rhode Island, so we don't have to go to Connecticut, Massachusetts to enjoy a water park in the summer or amusement park? So, what would you do to help basically to restore the tourism back here in Rhode Island, which would increase job growth?
Well, the tourism is not lacking in Rhode Island, believe it or not, because most of this generation is all about an experience. So they come here for the food. There's so much food here in Rhode Island, especially Providence. You can't go 2 feet without finding a restaurant. So if anything, I would definitely play on the cultures that live here. Representing the North End, if you go over to the Charles Street area of the North End, there's a lot of food there. But again, we don't have the recreations. We don't have any of the music festivals that go there. I mean, Hopkins Park, you could just plant a little studio right there. You can put up a tent. You could do a stage. You can have summer music festivals that all the families and friends would come to. You have a lot of Africans. You have a lot of Asians. You have everybody lives in the North End. That could be a functional space to utilize in the summer, especially. And a lot of these people have families in other states that would love to come to Rhode Island for that experience.
Absolutely. And now, speaking of schools and everything, we got a big problem, child grooming. I'm going to call it for what it is. Them trying to introduce legislation, even though it failed, but they're going to continue to do this, and they're knocking at the door, basically, to sexualize our children. I mean, young little toddlers. So, as a state senator, what would you do to protect the children? It should be up to the parents' rights to teach them about this stuff. You know what I mean? So, as a state senator and a mom, what would you do to help stop the sexualization of our children?
Well, as a mother, as a nurse, as someone who went to school for psychology as well and worked 12 and a half years at Butler Hospital, I really have seen what sexualizing children can do to the mental health of these kids. And if any administrator finds that it is this important to sexualize children, they need to be checked. They need to be taken out of office, because it is not their place. It's the place of the parent to utilize any of those resources from a doctor or from, the pediatrician when it is timely appropriate, and what resources to utilize. It is not the school's curriculum. It's not important. It is not at that age important to tell these kids about what sexualization is. When I was in 6th grade, I believe, is when we first started talking about puberty. What is wrong with talking to a 12-year-old about puberty when it's about the biology of the body and that's where it stays? What is wrong with that? There's so much that goes on once a child hits puberty that they don't want to think about sex. They don't want to think about anything like that because their bodies are so overwhelmed. Let them get through that stage in their life. Let them ask the question and guide the narrative. It is not our place to do so, not to kindergartners.
Absolutely. So what would you tell the voters right now in your district? Hey, what's your reason to vote for me?
Your reason to vote for me is because I'm not going to sexualize your children. Plain and simple. It is not my place to tell you how to raise your children, because I would not want that for myself. I would not want that for my child. If she comes home and is telling me that someone is saying something along those lines, I will be knocking on some doors, and I most likely will get arrested, because it is not their place.
And now, if you become a state senator, do you have any plans, or you already had in your mind to push bills in the state house with?
I would require a parent's signature to sign off on these programs that the kids will be utilizing to learn about sex.
Sounds good. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Powell.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. God bless you. Okay, we're here with State Representative candidate, District 7 in Providence. It's Chris Ireland. How you doing?
Doing awesome, Dan.
And you're running as independent, correct?
I am running as independent in Providence.
Against the incumbent, Morales.
That is correct. The incumbent socialist, David Morales.
So I was just going to ask you about that. So basically about this, people openly admitting that they're socialists. I mean, what kind of threat does that pose to our society, our community, and also our Constitution?
The problem I have with that, no one has ever came to the United States through all of our years for a life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and socialism. Never happened. I do not know how the current political system allowed him to hide underneath the banner of the Democrat Party and slip in as a socialist. Ironically, when I'm walking the district and talk to people, they don't know that. They do not know that the current person representing them is a socialist. So to me, his story reminds me of Hansel and Gretel. What did Hansel and Gretel do? The witch gave them food, fattened them up, made them feel good, with the end results to put them in the oven. And that's what David Morales does. He's out in the community, he's an activist, he does certain things that appear to be well, but what he wants at the end is socialism. This is the United States. We don't have socialism. People don't leave Cuba, Venezuela to go to socialism. That is not the United States. So shame on the Democratic period. That the party, they should have fixed it a long time ago. Shame with the media. Same thing, they should have fixed it long. He is not a Democrat. Right now, this race coming down in November is going to be the American Independent versus the American Socialists. That's all you have to think about. Do you want socialism? Because it started, unfortunately, Dan. Unfortunately, in Providence, this is where it started. And on the primaries, some of the candidates did not go through, which is great, but we have a problem. And if you're out there, do your research on socialism, Dan. I never thought I'd be looking at this much. I did not know it was a problem. Morales, socialism, Ireland, independence.
Absolutely. Speaking of socialism, Morales was a big supporter of Senator Samuel Bell's sexualization bill to literally teach young little children in school to sexually pleasure themselves. I mean, as our state representative, what would you do to combat this attack of grooming our children?
Well, first of all, the word is said grooming. Right now, it comes down to everything should be age appropriate. The biggest concerns with the schools right now, it comes down to the parents, the guardians, or whatever the family unit is in that household. They should know what's going on, right? If the parents or the family unit signs off on it, if they're okay with it, then proceed. But I do not know too many parents in the family unit that would actually say, yes, go and do that. And I think looks like, and I'm saying everywhere, but the more you read in the media, stuff's coming out, that stuff is being taught in the schools that is hidden from the family unit, and that's the problem right there. No matter what it is, should not be hidden. If it's on the curriculum, if we signed off on it, then go forward. But if you're hiding it and you're grooming it and you're trying to persuade kids, doesn't matter what age, that's not okay.
Absolutely. And now we've had a relentless attack on individual freedoms, Second Amendment, and many other things. I mean, in general, basically you got people in the State House not representing the will of the people. Even though the bills got voted down, they still push them through illegally. What would you do as a state representative to put a stop to this? These people in the State House attacking independent, constitutional rights?
Dan, I can only tell you my story, and I can only tell you where I come from, everything. Personally, I have not fired a firearm in over 30 years until stuff was happening literally in Providence with the riots and the questionable. So me and my wife, we had a discussion. And the discussion was, she's like, hey, do you want to go to the range? And I'm like, golf range? She goes, golf range, gun range, you choose. And so I did research, went through the process, getting my blue card, joined a couple of local clubs, learned first thing, firearm safety, learned how to shoot, learned how to do it the right way. And then from there I got my concealed permit in Providence and out of state. So everyone has to find out if it's right for them, all right? Again, 30 years, I didn't touch a firearm until then. The problem with the firearm issue is very similar to what they had, I believe it was in 2018 with abortion. It's not what they took away, it's how they did it. And that's the whole problem. So it doesn't matter what the issue is. If they want to get it, they're going to get it. And I don't think that's what people understood. That some people were happy what happened to the 2A community. But I look at it this way, if they did it to that, what else can they do it to? You know, so if you're asking me, do I support people's right to carry? Yes, but anyone that I know who carries, shoots, safety is first, and their responsibility of it. You know, I don't think people realize the first time I shot, again, over 30 years, it was power and respect. When literally you pull that trigger. And any responsible gun owner is the same way. And I think that's the problem too. Yes, we live in Providence. Yes, Providence does not have the greatest reputation. And I lived there 20 years. October is my 20th year in Providence. The problem, we have a gun problem. But the problem, what they're doing is they're restricting the good people and not addressing the whole issue with the bad people. And that's the problem.
Absolutely. Now, which relates into now the crime, the rise in crime in Rhode Island, Providence especially. What would you do as a state representative to say, all right, instead of, because, there's a lot of calls to defund the police and everything else.
Get me going, Dan. All right, so going back on my opponent, right? Part of socialism, again, I've had to do a lot of work on socialism to find out what, really what it is. Part of socialism is defunding the police. They want more power to the government, less power in general for the people, but they want to defund. They don't believe in the police. So there are signs in Providence that it says, I think, safe neighborhoods. Have you seen them driving around, right? And then they're with a candidate that has a socialist sign. But they never tell you, if they want safer streets and neighborhoods, how they're going to do it.
Yeah, because they take you right. They want to take you right way to defend yourself and defund the police. So how is it going to be safe?
How are you going to do it? I mean, obviously, everyone knows the police, they're not perfect. No profession is perfect, period, right? Give the police the resources they need, or work with them. I think people forget too, right? Providence, in each town, we're communities, and we all come together to fix our problems. Communication, get to know each other, get to know the police, right? I don't think anyone realized, right? When's the last time you got pulled over, Dan? Right?
A couple of years ago.
And what happened, right? You get pulled over, you're probably a little bit, jumpy, a little bit anxious because you don't know what happened, right? Yeah. Now, I can imagine that police officer is probably like that every time he goes to a car that he doesn't know, 3, 4, 5, 8 times a day, right? So we have to respect that. And I think that's one problem too. The police that I've spoken to, a lot of them say the morale's down and they need people to join the force. They need to join and be part of the solution. And that's the problem too. Everybody complains about problems, but they don't want to be part of the solution.
Absolutely. So, big question too, the homeless problem. I mean, the homeless, people being homeless in the state of Rhode Island, and especially in Providence, we get a lot of unfortunate people who are sleeping on park benches, living in tents and everything else. As a state representative, what would you do to say, tell the state, say, listen, let's stop giving money to foreign governments. Let's start helping our people first.
One thing I'm running on, period, is Rhode Island first, right? Rhode Islanders fixing Rhode Island, right? That's number one. I went down to the rally in Providence the other day, and it was eye-opening. And one of the things I did not realize, right, is college kids, again, all burdened with debt, but they're being homeless. So they're getting the education, but they have nowhere to live. So it never dawned on me at that young of age that would be an issue. I think they have to do temporary solutions to a permanent. Obviously, the weather's coming around. Unfortunately, they have to open up more shelters, more temporary housing right now. But they also have to address the big solution, right? Housing, zoning. To me, this is an issue regarding the unions should help fix it. The government should help. Private industry, so realtors, building associations, the towns have to help again with the zoning. Everything has come together to make the community better for everybody. Rhode Island has a problem with temporary solutions. If it's not hot, it's not in the media, or they don't address it properly. Let's actually fix it so we forget about it, but do it right. And do not forget about the people who are on their luck. If people are down, I'll give you my hand, Dan. You grab my hand. But you got to push yourself up too, right? If you want the help, let's get you the help from wherever you're going right now.
Absolutely. And also, what would you tell people in your district? What's the reason why they would vote for you over Morales?
I'm going to keep it simple. I said it before, Dan. The American Independent versus the American socialists. Right there. It doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, anywhere in between, you are not a socialist. And that's the number one difference between myself and Dave Morales. I believe in America. We all moved here for a reason. Generations. It can't be that bad of a country if millions of people are trying to get here yearly. They didn't come here for socialism. They came here because it's the best way of life. It's not perfect, but it's American dream. And if you take that dream away and go to socialism, we're done.
And as a business owner yourself, what would you do to help local businesses strive? I mean, become better, basically be able to hire people, afford, the cost of having a business, from tangible taxes and all the stuff, the taxes they get and the surges of bills and everything else that they need to pay for. Basically what I'm trying to say is the business is struggling right now.
Everybody's struggling. I was shut down, I think for like 7-8 months. I have a couple small business owner, a couple of small businesses. It wasn't easy. Majority of people fail, but some people innovate. I was able to diversify it a little bit. The people that I talk to, they have a problem with taxes. If you try to go to the Rhode Island Division of Taxation to find out how many taxes there are, won't tell you. Right? If you Google it, it was 58 taxes. During this whole last session, when we were all struggling with inflation, nobody allowed any reduction or elimination of taxes. There was two big ones that was on the table, right? It was gas and electricity, if I'm not mistaken, right? Those are two that they could have done.
Yeah.
They didn't pass them through. Why? Because in socialism, if you're not taxing, you can't give the crumbs out, right? And that's the biggest problem. They could have gave us tax breaks for everybody. The businesses, they did a little bit. They did cut down some of the red tape, and guess what? What happened when they cut down the red tape? A lot of the restaurants were thriving. Not perfect. They still have a problem with labor, which is another issue we'll talk about another time. But a lot of people thrived and got smarter, during this, because we had to literally think out of the box and had to think quick, because it's literally your livelihood. So the government and the business has to work together. It is not just about taxation and regulation, all right? Obviously, the government's there to protect the consumer, but also should be there to protect and help the businesses too. It has to work together, because you're not going to get the taxes if the business are closed, and that's why I think they forget about that.
And one last question I forgot to mention too is, do you think the state should be able to tax people and penalize them for not having health care, because health care is expensive? And for me, for example, if I can't afford health care, is it right for the state to penalize me at the end of the year in the taxes?
The problem right now, look at it, everyone's struggling, all right? I understand them wanting to have everybody covered. But the problem is, if you're not covered, there's other ways, unfortunately, to get health care. They always find a way, but if you can find the struggling class, right? That's the middle class, right? We're not middle, we're struggling, right? We're too rich to be poor and too poor to be rich, right? If the struggling class, if we have any money in our pocket, they want to tax it in a way. But if we're struggling so down below, they find a way, to get it. So there's ways in regards to health care, right? My daughter's type 1 diabetic, right? Ball of insulin is $400 to $700, right? That's one. If you think she only takes one a month, you're crazy. So look at that, right? The problem right there, right? Insulin, it cost $1 when he sold the formula, and he sold the formula for $1 for everybody. His theory was behind it that everybody would not go without it once they figured it out. And what's happening now is still people are dying from it, right? Yeah. So healthcare can be reduced. I have no problem with capitalism, but some days enough's enough. You are literally making money off people's health over and over and over again, all right? There's almost should be a morality clause in it. When is enough? Yeah. So the fact that you want to tax somebody for it is, again, they're trying to stop you so you would have it, but make it more affordable, and that's probably the best thing. Because I know about you, Dan, when I think it was 08, 09, when the housing crisis happened with the mortgage industry, right? I lost my business, right? My wife got lost our job. We had to use all of our savings in the 401k for health care, right? I think it was over $23,000 just to make sure that we had a plan, because our daughter was very young at the time, right? And just to make sure that everything went well, and that's what our savings are going to something that we probably never used. I don't think I've used it at that time at all, but we put the money out there to be caution. So yeah, should there be a better way? Absolutely. Do I have the answer right now? No. But the good part about it, if you look at the people going in now, we have tons of new candidates going in, fresh perspectives that want to work with everybody, the left, the right, in the middle, and that's the key part. They want to work with everybody to do what's good for everybody, not just somebody, the super deprived income, and not the super rich, right? We want to represent everybody. The people that are down below, we want to rise them, get them out of the poverty level. People who are middle, I don't think anyone's going to complain to get taxed a little bit more if they're making a lot more money. But tax rates is another issue, Dan. If I'm doing all the investment, all the work, all the labor, why are you going to be taxing it 40, 50, 60, 70%? I mean, you've seen people, that's what they want. It should be yours. So guess what? I guarantee if you're making more, you're going to spend more and you're going to give more. And that's what society would do. You don't want them to tell you you have to give. You want to do it to the charity that you want or the nonprofit.
And last question, big problem with Rhode Island, as you know, we got socialists trying to sexualize our children in the schools and everything else. What would you do as a state senator to put a stop to that and give parents their right to choose what goes on with their children?
Well, right there, the parents have to choose. We have to know as a parent. Again, I have a 12-year-old daughter, right? And I have conversations with her almost every day regarding certain situations in school. She's part of the charter school system, right? I do believe one of the problems with Rhode Island's education, huge problem with education, right? So obviously education should be an open choice. We have tons of schools. It was between public schools, private schools, and charter schools. Obviously the charter schools have something good out there, because if they didn't, people wouldn't be complaining about them, right? All you hear is people complain about the public charter schools versus the public schools. And all it comes down to is dollar and cents. Why do they have, where's the money going, right? The charter schools, they have a good formula. My question is, why can't we take that formula and duplicate it into the Providence school system and the school systems across the state? There's absolutely no reason. And this, again, goes back to a team effort. We need the charter schools. We need all these big schools, as in college level and universities, to help, right? And then we need the unions. The unions have to help us because it's a problem. When I was like 10 years old, I think it was Reagan was on TV, and it was talking about education. And now 40 years later, we're still complaining about education. Rhode Island, smallest state, we should have the best education, a good, healthy business environment, and people wanting to live here, period. We should be the role model for every state, period. Because guess what? This will actually work together, right? The last 2 years, if your life wasn't better, the last 2 years, vote for Ireland. Ireland for independence.
Thank you, Chris. Okay, we're here with Paul Rianna Jr. He's running as an independent candidate for governor. How you doing, Paul?
Doing great, and you, Dan?
Oh, great. So, big questions here, big issues in Rhode Island. We'll start off number one. If you've been, all these gun rallies and everything else, what is your thoughts about our gun rights being attacked? I mean, by the way, being pushed through illegally to be voted into law.
Well, I was there from the beginning all the way to the end when they sneaked in the bill, and I screamed my ass off, excuse my language. But at the end of the day, it's tyrants who are leading the state house, and I'm someone who's going to fight for all people, no matter what race, color, independent, Democrat, Republican. I'm going to fight for everybody.
Absolutely. Now we'll move on to the sexualization of children. The Senator Samuel Bell attempted to push a bill literally to teach children in school, toddlers, to sexually molest them, pleasure themselves. And this is a huge grooming of children, a socialist agenda. As governor, what would you do to protect children from this disgusting demonic attack, and also to give parents their right to choose yes or no, for children?
Well, either way, a bill will come to my desk and I would veto it right off the bat. I will not allow sexualizations in school. I fought at school committee meetings. I fought in person with the Rhode Island Freedom Fighters, and we do not believe in sexualization in school. And Tiara Mack, Sam Bell, and the rest of the co-op need to wake up and realize our children are not their children. Parents have the right to say no, and I will defend parents' rights from top to bottom. I will not quit on anybody.
And now you led the big charge against the mandates for the vaccine mandates, and also healthcare workers such as yourself that lost your job because you chose your right to say no to the vaccine. So what would you do as a governor to prevent that from ever happening again? And we know, because right now with the state emergency powers that's given to the governor and unconstitutionally to the director of the Rhode Island Department of Health. So as governor, what would you do to stop these unconstitutional mandates?
Well, I would try to convince the House and Senate to make a law where there will never be another mandate again. Now, as we know, the House and Senate are controlled by Democrats, so we have to vote for like-minded individuals that are running for the House and Senate. If we don't want government tyranny, we can't vote in tyrants. So we need to understand that no matter what happens, we have to fight for our rights. Our Second Amendment right, our First Amendment right, and our rights for our own choices. That's what we have to do as Rhode Islanders, and that's what we have to do as Americans.
And recreation in Rhode Island's been a big issue. I mean, yeah, we got all the restaurants in the world, but nowhere for kids to go, nowhere to enjoy the day out with your family. Instead, we got to go to Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Hampshire to get some kind of recreational. Let's talk about theme parks, water parks, what have you. What would you do as governor to push the idea? Let's bring back another Rocky Point. Let's bring back our own version of Six Flags or Water Country or something.
Well, like someone else has said, Ivan Montanez, who was also running, a Rocky Point type of thing is something I would like. I would like to bring back Rocky Point. That was big for Rhode Islanders. They enjoyed it. They had a good time. The horror house, the music going around. I forgot what it was called. The Rock and Roll Express, all of that. I would like to see that. I would also like to see an indoor water park. You know what I mean? So we can use it year round and generate revenue. It gives people from Mass, New York, Connecticut to come to Rhode Island and to see what we're about. We're going down there giving all our revenue to them. How about we build a revenue source for us and also build something recreational for children at the same time?
And then with the jobs and everything, so what would you do to help small businesses achieve their goal to stay in business, number one, and to help them be able to hire more people, help them, give them a break on taxes and all that? What would you do as a governor to help our small businesses succeed?
Well, like I said, we still got to work with the House and the Senate and the Lieutenant Governor. We got to build a relationship within the community to know what the small businesses need and want. And we have to actually get out into the community and talk to them. Not only get out in the community and talk to them when it's election time, but all year round. Because small businesses struggle every day. The mom and pop corner store, the little mom and pop liquor store, they struggle day in and day out. We need to figure out what their problem is and help them build so we can make Rhode Island great and keep it great.
And now moving on to the homeless issue. I mean, a lot of people unfortunately are homeless in Rhode Island. Instead, the state of Rhode Island decides, let's bring in Ukrainians, let's bring in Afghanistans. Now, there's nothing wrong with helping people, but meanwhile, they're doing that, pouring all this money into foreign entities. We have Rhode Islanders, veterans, police, former police, or anything, it may have been general families, sleeping in cars or on park benches. As a governor, what would you do to help the homeless here in Rhode Island?
Well, I would have definitely invested more money into homelessness, not the Superman building, not the Tidewater deal. There's a lot of abandoned houses and abandoned buildings. We could definitely renovate, fix it up, and get these people housed. There is no reason why anyone should be sleeping on a park bench or ripped a bus stop or sleeping in an island or under a bridge in Providence. There's no reason for that. This is America. We have the money to help the people. Instead of sending money to Ukraine and all these other foreign countries, we need to worry about the Americans, and Rhode Islanders need to worry about Rhode Island.
And another big issue when it was, all the tolls nobody voted for, the people didn't want it, but they pushed it through anyway. Same thing with all the, the Blackwater thing, whatever it is, and all these things that they pushed through, wasting millions of dollars of taxpayers' money. Remember the whole thing with the Kurt Schilling thing, the deal with the video game company. So our state government for a while has been investing millions of dollars of our money without the approval of the American, the Rhode Island people. So as governor, what would you do to say, tell the people, say, listen, we're not going to do this no more without the consent of the people?
Well, everything that I do with taxpayer money, I would want it voted on. So I have transparency with the people. That's what I'll do as your next governor of Rhode Island.
So basically a proposition question.
Yes. 38 Studios was a fail. The Tidewater project will be a fail. The Superman building, I don't know how they're going to make it affordable housing when there's going to be no parking. What, are they going to renovate Kennedy Plaza for a third time? It's financially irresponsible. We need to help Rhode Islanders now and worry about Rhode Islanders and stop helping corporations, Paolino and all these other people. Also, we have a hospital in Providence, St. Joseph's Hospital, where most of the floors are empty. Why can't we make that into either a one-room or a homeless shelter? The only thing that's really being used there right now is a dental clinic and a couple offices. Other than that, it's ghost town.
Especially with the harsh winter coming,
Exactly. People are going to freeze. A lot of people are going to get sick with ammonia and bronchitis, and people are going to try to spin it to COVID. But it's getting cold, and a lot of people are going to get sick, and we need to protect Rhode Islanders and put Rhode Islanders first.
Absolutely. So, and another issues too is like we got so many Rhode Island's crazy, man, and just basically be able to tell the people it's like I want to be a voice for you versus be going by corporate parties, political ideology, being politically biased. And I know you're independent, and as we've seen right and left in the state of Rhode Island, we have Republican and Democratic governors who did nothing but put us into the trenches. So what would you convince the Rhode Island voters, hey, give me a chance, vote for me? What would you tell them to do that?
See, the problem is in the state of Rhode Island is the two-party system. Look what the two-party system got us into. From Don Carcieri, Dan McKee, Gina Raimondo, Lincoln Chafee. I don't see Rhode Island progressing. I don't see Rhode Island growing. I see Rhode Island stuck at a standstill in a downward spiral. We need someone with a fresh mindset who's from Rhode Island, who knows what Rhode Islanders need, whether you're homeless, middle class, low class, that's what they call us, but we're not low class, we're struggling Rhode Islanders who need help. Instead of putting, clinics for people to go shoot up, we should be putting, drug counseling clinics out there. We should be putting rehabs out there. Something to help these people grow and build. And I understand not everyone wants to get help, but if we put a voice out there, letting them know that they can get help instead of enabling their drug use, it would do Rhode Islanders greater good.
Absolutely. Now we move on to crime. We got a explosion of crime because number one, calling to defund the police, they're actually supporting criminals, as you've seen the riots do, downtown Providence and everything else. What would you do as a governor to say, what, we need to stop this lawlessness and also help the police, but also educate the police on the Constitution, because there's multiple issues going on. We do know we got bad cops, but there's good cops too. But to educate the police on the civil liberties and also provide resources for the police to do their job.
Well, first off, we got to look at the problem. What is the problem? Homelessness, drug abuse, the pandemic, which is causing people to steal. It's causing mental illness, depression, which is making drug use at an all-time high. Fentanyl going out there, killing people, whether it's real fentanyl or fake fentanyl. We are not giving the police the resources they need. I remember back in the day, there was a thing called the Jump Out Boys, and it was more of a stop and frisk method. Something similar to that without violating someone's rights. You know what I mean? We need something more hands-on with criminals, because at the end of the day in Providence, you could drive around with ATVs, motorcycles, and all of these things, and no one says nothing. But how is that keeping Rhode Island safe? It's not. If an ATV hits your car, you're screwed because they're not insured. Then what happens? They go to jail and you're waiting for restitution, and you're not going to get paid.
Exactly. Now, as you know, the state house is armed, the banks are armed, half of them anyway. Federal offices in Rhode Island armed as well. So what about our schools? And we only got a small percent of schools that do have armed safety officers there. So what would you do as governor? Would you be in favor of putting, like, just say, military, former military police, whatever, that need work to put them to work, or just in general, giving the school resources for armed individuals to protect our children?
I spoke about this on my platform, that I would hire veterans to actually help protect our students. Also, I don't see why we can't have a metal detector. When I went to Hope High School, we had a metal detector before we walked in there. All of a sudden, it's not there no more. When we went to Hope, they found knives and all that at the metal detector, and it was semi-safe. You know what I mean? I'm not saying all crime's gonna be reduced in a day, but we can work towards that. We have to find ways to protect our children at all costs. A counselor is not going to protect our children. If a gunman walks in there, a counselor is just as going to run just as fast as a teacher and a student. And I'm not saying all cops are perfect, because look what happened in Uvalde. The cops didn't go and they made a mistake, but we can't blame them for every cop in America. You know, so I feel like we do need a police presence at all schools. If parents are worried about their children and people from the Rhode Island Political Co-op are worried about their children, they know counselors are not going to work, and they need to have, you know, resource officers there to protect the children.
And also, when you decide to run for governor, what would be your platforms that you say, all right, I want to put into action?
The first thing I want to put into action to end corruption is the Inspector General. I've been saying that from the very beginning. 2 years ago when I first started running, a certain candidate, I'm not going to say their name, basically stealing my platform left and right. If you read my platform from 2 years ago and you read their platform, everything Paul Rianna Jr. said, now this person is saying. It makes no sense, and I'm pretty sure everyone's going to figure out who the person is. At the end of the day, I am not running for a specific party. I'm not running for a specific person. I'm running for all Rhode Islanders.
And what would you tell the Rhode Islanders right now? Give them a reason right now to vote for Paul Rianna Jr. for governor.
You want to vote for someone that's going to defend you, be transparent, honest, and not going to bullshit you. I'm very straightforward, very confrontational, and I don't shy away from anybody. So if you have a question, I'll give you an answer regardless if you like it or not.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.